Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of the LitRPG podcast, episode number 273 of the show. I'm Ramon Mejia, here to bring you the latest LitRPG news, reviews, and author interviews. This week I have 4 new reviews for you and some nice LitRPG deals going on this weekend. Before we do that, we're going to show you the stories that we're reviewing this week. Is going to include Idea, Starting Point Book Number 1, a new book from Vasily Mahenko. We also have He Who Fights With Monsters Book 3. It's taking me almost a full week to read this massive thing. I'll let you know what I think about it later. Also, Arbiter, Underdog Book Number 7, the 7th and I think second to last book in the series. And also going to bring you a review for the online webcomic, I'm the Only One Loved by the Constellations. So all kinds of nice fun stuff. Before we jump into that though, we're going to go into some LitRPG news. Okay, first up in LitRPG news, we have a nice announcement from Michael Chatfield, author of the Ten Sword series, some other stories that you'll love. According to his announcement this week, he's actually offering autographed copies of The 2-Week Curse in hardcover and paperback, also Sacramon and The 10th Awakens for members of select Patreon tiers. So if you go support on Patreon, you might notice some changes to his particular Patreon page, and that'll include, the opportunity to get some physical copies, collector edition signed from the author if you support him there. So it says on the announcement that all signed books will be shipped in November and will arrive in time for the holidays. There are a limited number of each book available, so get yours before they're gone. And also Patreon subscribers are enjoying the 8th Realm sneak peek chapters, as well as the 7th Realm Part 1 audiobook chapter. So lots of great reasons to go support Michael Chatfield on his Patreon page. And other LitRPG news, we have the author of Aether's Apprentice, author Daniel Scheenhofen. He had announced on his closed group author Facebook page saying that he's celebrating his 5th year being a published author, so he's doing a giveaway. From now until October the 3rd, winners will be selected randomly. To enter, you need to comment on this particular thread, who's your favorite female character of any of his series and why. The why is important here, as you can only choose one female. So there you go. You go find, we have a link in the show notes for his author group page on Facebook, so you can go comment and hopefully be awarded one of these 10 prizes, including 6 winners will get a challenge coin, 1 winner will get a copy of the first 2 books in Aether's Revival signed in paperback form. There's also going to be a winner who gets the first 5 books in the Binding Ward series as signed paperbacks rather. 1 winner will get a copy of the Resurrection Quest signed in paperback, and 1 winner will also get the red shirt treatment in one of his future novel releases. The contest is also open on his Discord, so go check out the author Scheenhofen Discord page as well. Okay, and a couple of LitRPG deals we have. C.M. Carney, his second book in the Quintessence series, if I'm saying that right, is out. It's out right now. We have it in our new release section of our podcast list here. But to help promote it and to celebrate, he's actually going to be lowering the price of book 1 so you can get into the series for the low price of 99 cents. Which also he got, and this is information from the author. He's saying when you get the ebook on the cheap, you can also get a Whisper Sync, the audiobook, for the low price of $7.49. So he's letting you know that particular program does apply here. So you can get the audiobook and the ebook on the cheap, get you ready for reading the second book in the series. So go check that out. It's a nice, enjoyable series. We give it a good rating. Another nice little bit deal for the weekend is going to be Sentenced to Troll. This deal is apparently going to be for the next 5 days, so a little bit into next week. Essentially, the 4th book is out for pre-order. It'll actually be on our upcoming LitRPG list. It's coming out relatively soon. But the author wants you to catch up if you haven't read this nice, entertaining series. Book 1 is going to be free for the next 5 days. Book 2 and 3 are all going to be 99 cents in the US and the UK. So no reason not to pick up the series. It's very entertaining. It's on the cheap, and it'll get you ready for book 4 coming up pretty soon. Okay, on to stuff that is actually out now. It has been released since the last podcast, and we just put a list together of stuff, mostly because trying to look for LitRPG on the Amazon page that has come out recently is a pain in the buttocks. There's so much junk in there, whether it's like ripped off Chinese novels, translated novels are just being torn off the internet and thrown up on Amazon, or just like stories that don't really apply. They're just saying they're LitRPG game and they have nothing to do with their genre. Kind of crowds up that search result. So I do a search. I put together the releases that I find according to my Amazon search results, and I leave it here for you guys. You guys can very efficiently see what's coming out in the audiobooks section and ebook section. So here we go. Gone out now. We have the Crucible Quintessence book number 2, Blighted. So that's out for you to enjoy. Also a new book from Christian, Rising World. We have the 4th book in the Tower Climber series is out for you to enjoy. The 2nd book in the Immersion Online series. We also have the 2nd book in the World of Magic series is out as well. The 2nd book in the Ripple System, Black Sand Baron. I also have the 10th book in the Rise to Omniscience series. The 8th book in the Clan Dominant series, the Sleepless Ones. This is a Russian translation novel. The English publishers, Magic Books, and let me know that this is out now. I think there's supposed to be 2 more books, maybe 1 more. I can't remember which one they said for the series. So it's coming to an end. This is actually a very popular series in Russia, and I'm sure the publishers hope it's as popular as here. But it's long, it's finished, and it's heading towards the end. We also have Resurrection and LitRPG Adventure. Epiphany Realms book number 1 is out. The 2nd book in the Cat Cord series is out as well, as is Challenger's Call book number 7. Also VR Hero book number 4 is out. A new book called Interest Online, Watson's World book number 1 is out. Also a new story called I Am Mimic series by Mr. Dojo. The Natural Laws Apocalypse book number 2, System Return. This is the same author who wrote Light Online. We reviewed the 1st book of the series, and while we thought it was okay as an RPG apocalypse story, the apocalypse part was a little light for us, for me, I should say. But folks have really enjoyed it, so its 2nd book is out for you to enjoy. Also, the 3rd book in the Legendary Dungeon-C, the Mages Academy, is out for you. Also, the War for Sorcerer, which is a Singularity Online book number 5, is out. The 7th book in the Heavenly Throne series is out for you, and a standalone series called Black Spire, a novella series, is out, as is a new book from Sean Oswald called Shaman's Call, Frostburn. Also, the Crypt Lord's Call, God Guild book number 1. So all kinds of stuff out for you to enjoy. We also have new audiobooks for you folks. I know many listeners who love audiobooks more than ebooks because they can listen while they drive, while they work. Plenty of reasons. I'm one of those folks who used to listen to a ton of audiobooks. So I always try to keep this list up to date as well, of like things that have come out since the last podcast. And that includes Black Sand Baron. They're doing an ebook and an audiobook simultaneous release. The Ridden, a Gamelit Apocalypse fantasy novel, is out as an audiobook, as is the 1st book in the Age of Stone series by Jez Caillo, The Rise of Mankind. The 2nd book in the Towers of Acalia series is out as an audiobook. As is the 6th book in the Nova Terra series, Earthshaper. The 3rd book in the All Trade series called Corporate Warfare is out as an audiobook, as is a series from Aaron Foster called Age of Ancients, Shadow Kingdom, which I personally enjoyed as an ebook. Resurrection, the LitRPG Adventure, out as an ebook, as an audiobook at the same time. And we actually have quite a few boxed sets where authors have collected like the first few books of their series and released them as audiobooks. So they give like 30, 40 hour audiobook sets just in one book. So like this is a great deal if you've never gotten into the series. Great chance for like a single credit to like really get into like a good series. And that includes the Reality Benders series box sets, which is books 1 through 4 out for you. We also have Realms Between books 1 through 3, Discardium series book 1 through 4. And I think there's one more, I can't remember. Anyway, so those are the ones that are out as sets. We also have some singles, of course. Couch Potato Chaos, book number 2. A short story from Tao Wong called Blue Screen of Death is out as an audiobook. The Last Physicist, which we actually enjoyed, is out as an audiobook as well, as is Dead Rock Highlands Overtaken Online, book number 2. Reborn Apocalypse, book volume number 3 is out as an audiobook as well, as is Rise of the Death Stalkers, book number 2. Awakening is also out. And the Cat Core book number 1. So book number 2 is out now as an ebook. Book number 1 is out as an audiobook for you. Interest Online, another one is a simultaneous release, ebook and audiobook out at the same time. And Honor and Iron, Frostworld Series Book Number 2 out as an audiobook. So plenty of things for you to enjoy if you like LitRPG in the audio format. On to the list of stuff that is coming out in the near future. I have this list coming out for the next couple months, so October, November, December. Anything in that time frame that I can find on Amazon. Searching through all the lists that I can find, I'll put in here for you folks. And that includes Sentence to Troll, which will be out on October the 4th of this year. So then also Purgatory, The Devil's Game, will be out on October the 5th. This is a new story, a new series from M.A. Carlson. On October the 5th as well, it'll be An Old Man's Journey. On October the 5th as well, it'll be Commando, Battlegrounds Online, book number 2. October the 6th, it'll be the High Table Hijinks, book number 3 from Christopher Johns, The Land of the Drunken Pharaohs. On October the 7th, the second book in the Apocalypse Online series. Also on October the 8th, it'll be The Weight of It All, book number 4, Collapse. On October the 11th, it'll be Project Stellar, book number 5. October the 14th, it'll be In the System, book number 3. On October the 15th, Divine Apostasy, book number 5. On October the 15th, it'll be Demogorg Colossus, Overtaken Online, book number 4. On October the 15th, it'll be Cowboy Necromancer, book number 2. October the 18th, it'll be Unfrozen, book number 2. On October the 19th, it'll be Draken Prince, which is a new standalone story from James McCaffrey. On October 21st, it'll be Player Reaches the Top, book number 7. On October 26th, it'll be An NPC's Path, book number 5. October 26th, They Call Me the Maddest, the Mad Series, book number 3. October 26th, it'll be Blessed Time, book number 2, Coda. On October 26th, it'll be The Centennial Tournament, Infinite Realms, book number 3. On October the 26th, Underverse, book number 6. October 31st, The Sword to Plowshare Saga book. On November the 3rd, Towers of Acalia, volume number 5. On November the 4th, it'll be Discardian, book number 9. November the 9th as well, it'll be The Legend of Randomly Ghost Hound. There are a lot of folks who read it online on Royal Road would be familiar with them. First time reading it, but I hear good things. On November the 11th, The Range, book number 3. November the 16th, it'll be The Loner, book number 1. November the 16th, The Houndsman. On November the 19th, A Buccaneer's Due, book number 1. I'm super not into pirate LitRPG, but I'm always willing to give it a shot. But some folks really do love piratey sea stories. So that'll be out on November the 19th. November the 30th, this one actually I believe shifted a little bit. It's supposed to come at the beginning of November. It is shifted to the end of November, November the 30th for Defiance of the Fall, book number 3. December the 1st, it'll be VR Hero, book number 5. December the 7th, Magnus, book number 3. December the 7th, this one shifted as well. Morkster Chef, book number 1. On December the 10th, it'll be Guardian of Astrofall, book number 2. November the 14th, Uncontrollable, a LitRPG adventure. On November the 15th, it'll be Clan Dominance, book number 9. On December, I keep saying November, December, this is all December. December the 16th, it'll be Fantasia, book number 2 by Simon Vale. December the 21st, Epiphany Realms, book number 2. December the 26th, Adventures of Brad, book number 7 from Tao Wang. So that's his fantasy LitRPG series world. So on December something, I forgot to put the date, but it's probably about December 26th. Alpha Rome, book number 3. December 28th, it'll be He Who Fights with Monsters, book number 4. So that's everything I could find for the rest of this year. In the upcoming, and of course, this list is available online on our website at LitRPGpodcast.com and our recommendation section, also on our Facebook page. We put it out a little bit after the podcast is published on our Facebook and Twitter page as well. So you can have lots of places to find this list in case you just skipped over reading it and you want to check it out for yourself in print. It'll be available there and also in the show notes, of course. On to new releases and reviews. Okay, first review this week is going to be Idea, Starting Point, book number 1 of LitRPG series from Vasily Mahenko. This is 393 pages, $3.99. It is available on Kindle Unlimited, and here's the author's description. Vasily Mahenko's new LitRPG series set in the universes of his World of the Changed. Modern times, genius physicist Antiam Kurbiach found himself facing the darker side of the world we live in. Integrity is met with a laugh, and a rat race instead full of people out to grab whatever they can. Where big money is on the line, no betrayal, even of loved ones, is a bridge too far. But Antiam couldn't bring himself to conform. Instead, he decided to make a change in himself, if not the world around him, his work, surrounding, country. However, the world wasn't ready to let the genius go. It was benefiting too much from him. In one moment, everything was turned upside down, and Tiam's freedom was exchanged for prison, his noisy colleagues for morose cellmates, and his spacious labs for tiny offices and restricted research institute. All that remained of his daily drive to make the world a better place. And that just left the tiny detail of how to actually make that happen. So there we go. Full disclosure, I received advance copy for review. I purchased a copy when it became available. Okay, this is kind of a weird story in that you can read it as a standalone story. It is absolutely completed. You don't have to read anything else in the Changed Universe series or the Alchemy series, which are the ones that are connected to this. However, I think if you've read those series, you're going to like this a lot more. And looking at the other reviews of the story, for people who haven't read like the Universal series, this is apparently super dark for them. As I was reading it, there are things in here that are like, they're like cloning and mind scanning and artificial reality control systems, like trying to change people's thinking through like almost as Pavlovian shock treatments through implants. And I was reading like, I've read this before, and I realized as I was reading it that it didn't have the same dark impact on me because I've read about these systems, advanced versions of these in the other series, in the World of Change, in the Alchemist series. And that's what this really is. This fundamentally, I want to call it a prequel because it has original characters. It's set on our Earth, and those other stories set onto the like multiverse universes almost. But this is like the start of where the technology comes from those other stories. And I appreciate it because I'd read those other stories, and you wonder like, man, who came up with this like terrible like system of like RPG systems and advancement systems, and they're all super detailed in the other worlds. And it's interesting to see them developing in this one and how they're originally purposed for control systems and ways to change people implicitly for their benefit according to like the main character's point of view. But still, some other readers have thought like, this is a real dark Russian story because they're using technology to kind of, let's say, mind control people, but definitely to implement behavioral changes for, essentially for their own benefits. And a lot of the story has the main character being kidnapped and taken away from the world and being forced to do research and explore things. And there's a whole like independent story here that doesn't have anything to do necessarily with like those other universes, but you see a lot of like the technological developments, like, like the more primitive versions of them in this story, and seeing how they're like, this is like such a well-planned like out like a system, and that the author is like, these terrible systems were initially implemented for the benefit of mankind, and they were conceptualized by people in power wanting to maintain control, but the main character does it for to help people, and it's just like such an interesting combination of like, there's like the unforeseen consequences of developing technologies and stuff, and like the dark ways that it can go because people in power abuse them. And it's a bunch of really neat, cool stuff, even on its own. It's just that, if you've read the other series, like, you can see like the connections and how it eventually, like sometimes hundreds of years in the future, goes super terribly wrong, or how it twists, or how it changes and evolves as it progresses through the universe. So it's kind of a neat thing. The game mechanics in the story come from an interface that just hands out quests and monetary rewards, and being trade information, items, resources. If you've read the other series, this is nothing new. This is a more primitive version of that. So it is what it is. But it's interesting as a reader to see how those systems start here and how they're going to be implemented in those other stories. Overall, I enjoyed the story. I liked it. it can be read as a standalone story, but I think the people who are going to get the most out of it are the people who've read the Alchemist series or the World of the Change series. I think they'll appreciate it the most just because they'll see all the little nods and all the little like connecting things. But for me, still a good time with it. Score of 7.5 out of 10. That's idea starting point with the score of 7.5 out of 10. Okay, next up is He Who Fights with Monsters, book number 3, a LitRPG adventure. Written by Shirtaloon. It is 895 pages. It is $6.99. It's available on Kindle Limited. Here's the author's description. For all that Jason's new life is amazing, he is about to learn that his new power, wealth, and influence comes at a price. Riding high on success, he and his team are looking to the future, preparing themselves for the challenges to come. Nothing, however, could prepare him for the lessons his enemies have to teach. When magic is involved, the stakes can be even greater than life and death. While Jason's personal enemies make plans, the greater foes plaguing the new world, his new home, have been pushed to the brink. With one powerful card left to play, they are on a collision course with Jason and his team. With no one to help and more than their lives on the line, Jason and his companions must fight with more monsters than ever in the race to grow stronger, with an invincible enemy already anticipating them. They will learn that sometimes winning the battle is more important than surviving. So there we go. A lot of folks have already read this. This is a couple weeks old. I just happened to get to it this last week. I had an opening and schedule, and this took a long time. It's almost 900 pages. And so it took a good bit of time, but I enjoyed every minute of it. This is a really good action adventure story. I enjoyed the surprising story twist in the early part of the story. It gave the main character an antagonist and problems to deal with that weren't directly action oriented. And I really enjoyed that different kind of conflict that the main character is pulled into, and the fact that the consequences to that were carried throughout the entire story. I was glad to see that it just wasn't like a one-off thing, that main character is back to his same quirky, smart Alex self, but that there's actual behavioral kind of PTSD thing happening with the main character throughout the rest of the story that really impacted the way he fought and interacted with the rest of the universe. I like to see those consequences from such a major event in the main character's life, actually see them played out. I think that was really nicely well done. One of the only complaints I think other readers had, if you're reading the reviews, is probably towards the end of the story. It felt it's like the last 10-15%. The main character's arc is kind of resolved by then, and so there were a bunch of little tiny short stories and these little novella, I guess, little short stories, and it's just pop, and that's the last 10% of the series. But almost none of the people in those stories are people that you know, with the exception of one or two. And so there are a lot of complaints in the review saying, man, the last 10%, I don't know what to do with this. And it's very much a case of just this is a serial story. You got to remember, this is a serialized story that's written over years online. It's just being collected and published. And so you're going to get some of these things where the author's man, I'm tired of writing that main story. I want to write some short stories for these other characters. And sometimes there'll be just interesting backstories for characters you have mentioned before. And sometimes there'll be setups for other storylines that have yet to be shown. And sometimes they're just going to be oh, these are random stories in this universe. And this is kind of part and parcel to the serialized system. And so that's what they are. For me, I understood what they were. But I also understand the complaints from some readers saying they don't make sense and they seem kind of random. And that's certainly the case. So it is what it is. I still had a good time with it. I give it a score of 7.8 out of 10. That's He Who Fights with Monsters, book number 3, with a score of 7.8 out of 10. That's a really good review score because I had a really good time with it. Next up is going to be Arbiter, Underdog, book number 7, written by Alexei Osachuk. It is 469 pages. It is $6.99. It's available on Kindle Limited. Here's the author's description. The skies of the Dark Continent teem with ravening beasts. Thousands of refugees are at the gates of Forston, seeking salvation from mysterious scourge. The wastes are infested with herds of bloodthirsty necromorphs that devour every living thing in their path. A dark gateway is open in the stone forest, allowing a horde of otherworldly monsters to come flooding through. Adversaries from time immemorial are gathering armies and amassing forces. Ancient enemies are forming alliances. The world of the great system stands once again on the precipice of change. A new war is coming. And I think that last sentence, New War's Coming, kind of summarizes the direction that the story ends up going. This is still a kind of a slice of life action romp adventure thing. The story keeps pushing to expand the cast and the scope of the story with larger problem, larger fights, and town building. So that's essentially where the story's going. Big, gigantic battles. That's essentially what it is. There's set up for them. There's some town building to help like pull out defenses, and then the armies come, and the main character and his forces, his allies, his group defend against them. That's kind of what the story is, and it's not bad. It's entertaining. It definitely builds on what has come before it, leading to these large scale battles. But for me, as I was reading it, I think the thing that kind of hit me was like, man, I don't know where this story is going anymore. Like, there's always been like this big main antagonist, and eventually you kind of get to see him towards the end of it. But it felt a little disappointing in how that was resolved at the end. It felt a little. I was like, that wasn't the direction I thought it was going to go. It's a little one wavy there, especially at the very, very end. But I also understand the author is trying to stretch out the series, and he's trying to tell a story, and he has one more book in the bank to try to knock this thing out and wrap it up. But I was definitely starting to feel the series drag a little bit. Not that the action or adventure is bad or anything. It's just that the overall story is like, man, this has been going for a long time. I'm feeling a little series fatigue, I think it's called. But according to the English translators, Mandarin books, there's just, I think, one more book in the series. So that should be wrapping it up, hopefully. So for me, it gets a score of 7.4 out of 10. That's loses like a tiny bit just because it's hard to see where the story is necessarily going at this point. But I still had a good time with the action, adventure, nice battles, nice town building stuff, nice town defense stuff. And if you like the series before it, you're going to like this one too, and I did. It gets a score again 7.4 to 10. That's Arbiter, Underdog book number 7 with a score of 7.4 out of 10. Okay, next up is I'm the Only One Loved by the Constellations. This is a manga review. This is an online webcomic. Currently, as of this review, it has 22 chapters. It is free on the internet. There is no official English publisher. And so I have links in the show notes for the volunteer translators and also the aggregator group. And here is the novel manga description. The hunter from the Seal Tower, Bak Ho Min, fell into despair after obtaining the trash skill, Reminiscence. However, he keeps receiving the love of the constellations every time he activates the skill. Ah, why do the constellations only love me? A fantasy story of the serious constellations inside his head. And I think that novel description does not do this story justice. It may just be the translated version of it, but this is essentially a regressor story with a very interesting twist. Most regressor stories, if you know what they are, somebody from the future essentially has this big conflict and they die, or they get some opportunity or some token or whatever to travel back into their own past. So they're not traveling back into the past beyond where they live. So it's somewhere in their lifespan, and they get a chance to essentially relive their life over with all their foreknowledge. So this is very often used to make a very overpowered character who knows all the secrets of the towers, all the little mini quests or quirks or exploits or whatever the case is, right? And so it's a very interesting way to make an OP character who still has to work for it, because they're still the same underpowered normal character they are, and they're just reliving the life using future knowledge for the most part, but they still have to work hard to gain that power. In this particular case, the twist is that while the main character is still doing this kind of regressor thing, he doesn't have access to any of that future knowledge from his previous lives. Instead, every time he dies, essentially, his whole life resets. He's reincarnated back into like that same timeline future, but the person who dies is sent to the same kind of mindscape in his brain, or in the Constellation universe, which is kind of their fancy way of saying like gods or people who have ascended or whatever. And so in the beginning part of the story has the main character who died at the start talking to the other iterations of himself who chose different pathways. Like this one main character might have chosen the warrior path and become like this amazing sword artist, right? Another main character might have chosen, alchemy, and then another main character might have chosen magic or whatever the case is. And there are hints that there are even like tons of other characters who chose like completely different things, but these are the ones that still have an interest in the current iterations of their own births of no lives. Now, the only problem for them is that they cannot communicate with themselves. They can't communicate with their current iteration unless he gets this super trashy power called reminiscence. And that's to everyone else, it's a terrible power. It's a low level, but for this main character, because he has this situation where his other iterations are starting to communicate because of his ability, that's where their memories come into play, and that's where their knowledge of like the pathways that he can potentially take and the dangers that exist come into play. And I thought it was really well done, the fact that they're not just directly telling him things, but they can only give him hints through like the ways that they're creating. And it's as simple as like, they like this, and that's the best thing they can give him as to what path he should take. And I like the ability, of course, that it's a good twist. I like the fact that he's not overpowered necessarily, that he still has to make his own mistakes, that he still has the ability to become a little overpowered, but not so much. And as the story progresses, again, it's only 22 chapters in, he gets into like these bigger and bigger plot lines and enemies and allies. And it's just kind of fun to see this kind of regressor story with this interesting twist. So the main character doesn't have direct access to all that foreknowledge, but it exists somewhere. And like his other self, his other iterations are trying to communicate with him and help him essentially overtake the mistakes that they've necessarily made, or the plot holes, or getting advances, and try to save mankind, which is ultimately always the big goal of all these kind of stories. So for me, had a good time with it. The artwork is really nice. The artwork is clean lines, good stuff. Gets a score of 7.6 out of 10 for me. That's slightly above, average. Had good storyline, but again, it's a little early. I was waiting until at least had 20 chapters before I reviewed it for you guys. I'm the only one loved by the Constellations, with the score of 7.6 out of 10, because I thought it was rather well good. Hey, that's it. That's the end of the show. Thanks very much for listening, for watching, for hanging out with us. We have links in the show notes for all the places you can catch the podcast, subscribe to us, listen to us, watch us on a weekly or bi-weekly basis, or whenever we have to do the show, including links to our Patreon page where you can help support the podcast directly and help keep this podcast free and ad-free and pay for all the incidentals associated with recording and stuff. So also links where you can download the podcast on Spotify, Audible webpage. And of course, links for other Facebook groups where you can connect with authors you like and other readers and get recommendations and good stuff like that. If you enjoy the podcast in any way, shape, or form and want to find other ways to support us, you can find out how to do so at LitRPGpodcast.com/support. And we can hang out again, folks. Thanks a lot for hanging out with me today. I'm remembering to go read some LitRPG. Goodbye, everybody.